All around the world, we always hear people talking about love, talking about how they feel when they are in love. But they think the heart is the responsible for this feeling. But it isn't. It is the brain. Helen Fisher and her colleagues decide to make a research about how the brain works when we are in love. They choose different people in different love situations with different stories, and they put them in a MRI machine. This MRI machine, it is a scanner that scans your brain and shows up what are the parts of the brain that are active when you are in love. Besides that, anthropologists have found love evidence all around the world in all the societies in the past and in the present. That means love is something that human beings feels and grows with. In my opinion, love had always existed, but in our society, love has been changed for hate. On the other hand, love isn't always a good experience. In their research, they asked college students different questions about love experience. 95% of these students had been rejected by someone, and they have suffered because a bad love experience. That is why Helen Fisher and her colleagues decided to study how the brain works when we are falling in love or when we feel love for somebody. In that research, they found activity in 3 parts of the brain: in the ventral tegmental area, in the AT cells, and in the VTA part. These parts also receive that effect when people consume cocaine. Therefore, love is a motivation, an addiction, and also an obsession. Also, in the research, they discovered that the love is located in a brain region that is associated with making calculations about gains and losses in life. For example, when we are rejected by someone, we decide to forget that someone. But it is impossible because our brains continues thinking about that loss. So it is a hard work. Furthermore, a region that is associated with high attachment, it is activated when we are in love. That is why we want to be with that person all the time. We want to feel it. We want to talk about them because that part of our brain that is feeling a big attachment to that person, it is activated. And that is why we feel we love that person every day more. Then, love is a focus on a person, an obsession, an addiction. In the research, they describe love with 3 characteristics about addiction: tolerance, withdrawals, and relapse. In addition, in this research, they study animals, and they discover that animals feel love. They are very selective, and they have their favorite mate. Moreover, they study people that are still in love in a long-term relationship. So, they put them in the MRI machine and study the brains. So, in the scanner, the parts that are activated are the parts that show up the love in a long-term relationship. So, that means that a really intense love continue the love in your brain, and it is the brain that responsible for continue feeling that. So if that parts of the brain are activated, you will continue loving that person even though time passes. So in my opinion, love is part of the brain because it is the brain who decides if we continue loving or if we stop loving that person. In conclusion, it is the brain that is responsible for our feelings and our feeling of love. It is very important to know that because we live in a society that is confused, thinking about that is the heart that is responsible. So we fall in love with someone rather than another, because it is the brain that decides and looks up for the general characteristics.